Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth segment of the My Kid Cures Cancer Thriver stories. We have with us my longtime neuroblastoma researching compatriot, Andrea Shoup. Andrea, how are you?
Hey, good, Ryan. How are you?
Quite well, quite well. Yeah. I was just we were just talking offline, and this has been pretty neat this is pretty neat for me as we've been, messaging back and forth, sharing neuroblastoma tips for a few years now, and you've been at it longer than we have even. Yeah. So this is the first time we're actually talking, and that's pretty cool. And you are in Minnesota, correct?
We are. Yep.
Awesome. Well, yeah, like I was saying, and welcome, I guess before we get into it too much, welcome everybody. I hope everyone's having a good night, and I hope you're all enjoying this new segment of the show for childhood cancer parents, and for anyone else that feels like hearing some inspiring stories and stories of researching everything for yourself and not waiting around for anyone to do it for you. That's always been our motto, and I know that's certainly Andrea's motto as well, from all the research I've seen her doing over the years. So, Andrea, would you like to tell us about your journey with your daughter Ellie?
Sure. So our daughter Ellie was diagnosed at 11 months of age with neuroblastoma, just like Ryder. And at the time, she was considered low risk. She was stage 2, which in the books of neuroblastoma, right, that's like the best you can possibly be, basically. They completely resected her tumor, and we felt really lucky, like we had dodged a huge bullet. Prognosis was excellent, and we were cautioned against jumping online, doing our own research. Don't talk with other people, you're just going to get scared. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And regrettably, at the time, we chose to kind of bury our heads in the sand. And we took their advice. I think mostly because we thought she wasn't going to need any further treatment, right? It was kind of like, oh, we're done. We had surgery. That's the end of this cancer story. But obviously I'm here, so that's not the end of that story. So they followed her with routine scans for the first, for the first year after surgery, it was every 3 months, right? That's pretty standard. And at her second follow-up, our oncologist told us that they had seen some lesions on her spine, but that they didn't think it was cancer. And so I'm like, well, then what is it? And they told us they thought it was a hemangioma, this benign collection of blood cells that we're only noticing because we're scanning every inch of her body. So, I raised an eyebrow, and I'm like, well, why weren't they there at the previous scans? Well, so then they go back and look, and oh, I guess they were there on the previous scans, but we're just seeing them better now because we have a better MRI machine. Okay. Oh, wow. That was the first excuse, right?
And I'm sorry, just before we get too far ahead, I always like to ask, how did you get the initial diagnosis? Like, how did you find it in the first place before it was resected?
Yeah, so Ellie's left eye one day just didn't completely open, and I actually thought it was an allergy. She had never been sick, she never had a fever, she ate well, she had never been on an antibiotic. She was our picture of health. And she was our first baby, she was our first child, so I thought it was odd, so I took her in. And anyway, it didn't resolve within a day or two, so we went back, the pupil wasn't dilating correctly, and here they found it was a tumor in her neck that was pressing on a nerve that led to her eye. So gotcha. Somewhat of an unusual location for neuroblastoma, in the neck. Usually it's on top of the adrenals.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funky. So we continued to do these scans over the course of the next 3 years. So we scanned her for 3 years. And right before she turned 4, they said, oh, another lesion is on her spine. I'm like, another one? What's this about, right? And so I requested the radiology reports. And in the radiology reports, it had noted that this new lesion followed an abnormal signal pattern. So again, I'm going back questioning, well, why does it have an abnormal signal pattern if you're not worried about it? Now it's the radiologist is saying it's abnormal. So anyway, I pushed for further labs and workups. There is a urine test, right, that they do for neuroblastoma, and they had done it and it came back normal. In fact, the nurse called me and said, oh, Ellie's lab results were normal. And I, great. And then at the last second, I said, wait a second, can you tell me what the values were? And she looked, she grabbed her paper. Oh, it was 25.2. Okay, well, what's the cutoff? 26. Like, okay, so,
No.
so we're like borderline abnormal. We have these like lesions on her spine, and we're talking neuroblastoma. And, at the time, we hadn't done any treatment. So I hadn't done any of this research, and I'm fully like 100% trusting our oncology team. Okay. Biggest mistake I've ever made in my entire life. I hate to admit that to everybody watching this, but it was a huge mistake. And it, we're lucky it didn't cost us her life, to be completely honest. So anyway, we pushed for a full workup of scans, and come to find out these spots that they had been watching for 3 years, it was neuroblastoma. So we had confirmed that she had metastatic neuroblastoma in her body untreated for 3 years.
Yeah, no, that's that was same with Ryder. Big old lump sticking out of his back. He stopped growing at 6 months. Wasn't walking at a year, wasn't crawling at a year old, and it was just keep an eye on the big lump in his back. It's probably nothing. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, it's crazy.
All right, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so we find out she has metastatic disease. So we jump into treatment, right? You don't have a choice whether or not you're going to pursue treatment with children. At least here in Minnesota, you don't. So we started our journey right into conventional medicine. So she did her 5 rounds of chemotherapy. And, at some point, I guess I made a shift in my thinking, because for the longest time I was crying every day, right? Like I wasn't thinking straight. I went to the grocery store one time, and they like you're supposed to pull up and get your groceries. Like they load them up for you. And I drove all the way home, Ryan, 20 minutes. Like I drove home without my groceries. Like my mind was just like misfiring. I was just, you're in shock. And but at some point I became irritated and angry enough with what I was seeing with her being inpatient. They would come and do a blood draw at 5 a.m. and wake her up. I'm like, no, you can't actually draw her blood at 5 a.m. She needs her sleep. So like,
well, they pick the darndest times for all those things, don't they?
I know. I mean, it's crazy. So, I eventually got kind of over the shock and sadness, and I was like, okay, we are not going to have like we're not going to accept death as an option. Like Ellie's going to beat this, and if she doesn't, I want to be able to at least say that we've tried every single thing that I can possibly do for my child. So, I started just scouring the research, pulling up, like you did, pull up your good old friend PubMed, and there I was at 2 a.m, doing all this research.
Turns out there's a lot of interesting stuff on there.
Yes, there is. And I had been following your guys's blog at the time, and so that gave me a good foundation to start from. But I just started like taking research that I would find into the hospital, and I would say, tell me about this. You recommended 5 cycles of chemotherapy. Can you show me the study as to why you're recommending 5 versus 7? And they kind of like would look at me like deer in the headlights. But eventually I think they started to kind of take me seriously because I knew what I was talking about. So towards the end of our cancer, or towards the end of her chemotherapy, like I had come across information that GCSF promotes, stem cell proliferation and survival there. So, I brought it up to our team and I'm like, look, I don't want to do GCSF anymore. You know what their response was to me? I can't believe it took you this long to bring that up to us.
Really?
Yeah. Like they couldn't believe I hadn't like stumbled upon it sooner. And trust me, I wish I had.
And just for everyone listening out there, GCSF is, you might know it by Neupogen or Neulasta. It's the granulocyte colony stimulating factor, something like that. So it's what they give you in between chemo cycles to pump your immune system back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's research on there about it aggravating existing cancer, more or less. So yeah, and secondary leukemia too. That's a good one. But.
Yeah. So I have this information, and that was, I think, like their response, I think, was just kind of the tip of the iceberg for me. And I really started to realize that they're not going to willfully share this information with parents, right? Like they're not going to advise you against doing conventional treatment despite research that suggests otherwise. And then I was asking, can we give her milk thistle? And oh yeah, you should speak with the integrative medicine person. Well, great. Why hasn't she stopped by already? We've been here inpatient for 6 weeks. So I think I started coming to the realization that I was going to have to ask the right questions myself, do the research myself. So we finished chemotherapy, and then the next step in treatment was transplant. And at the time Ellie was going through treatment, there was all this new research that was just coming out that said 2 transplants are better than 1, right? So why not just throw a whole bunch more chemo at your kid and expect a better outcome? Why not?
And I'm sorry, once you kind of got a re-diagnosis, was it still stage 2, or was it now a new stage? Was it high risk, intermediate risk, low risk, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so that had all changed. So she was considered stage 4 high risk because, okay, right, because now she was 4. Ellie had like favorable histology. She was not MICN amplified. Her tumor was hyperdiploid. So everything under the microscope was as favorable as it could have been, I guess.
Yeah.
But we missed the age cutoff. So if they had, unfortunately, if they had caught this before 18 months of age, treatment would have been different. But that ship sailed. So.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I mean, Ryder was diagnosed 11 days before his first birthday. And that's, that as long as you're not MICN or NMIC, however you want to say it, amplified, then, that puts you in intermediate risk. But then above 18 months is high risk. And then is it kind of, I've never really asked anybody, is it just kind of, anyone's guess between a year to 18 months?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it just trips me out sometimes. Like if he was diagnosed 12 days later, he could have
I know.
Could have been high risk and just in a whole nother protocol, whole nother set of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've known families, like you miss that arbitrary cutoff by 2 weeks and it makes a world of difference. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So then we came to the point where we were supposed to do transplant, and not just 1, but 2. And, there's, a 5% chance of death. There's, the risk of VOD, severe mucositis. You're inpatient for, weeks, if not months, and hearing loss and, fertility issues. And the list just keeps going and going and going and going. And Ellie was like doing really, really well. And I just kept thinking, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think that this is the right fit for her. But the problem that my husband and I struggled with it because it's, you're taking a big leap of faith, right? To go against what your team is recommending. You don't want to feel like you're missing out on something that potentially could help your child. But at the same time, it seemed like the risks outweighed the benefits. So, through networking and through talking, with other parents and doing my own research, I realized, hey, there's this other hospital that stopped doing transplant back in the 90s. They see the most neuroblastoma kids. And based on, this giant wealth of experience, they realized it actually didn't improve overall survival. So I'm like, hey, how about that? So, it was not an easy decision to come by, despite, I think, the fact that we knew that that was the right choice for us. It was still a really hard decision for us to make.
Yeah. No, just, it's one thing to like, know that this is kind of what you want to do, or this is where the research is pulling you and all that good stuff. But then when you actually do, or you're faced with the decision, it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, and, this whole time, you want to come say hi? The whole time that we had been making decisions, we really just, the whole time we said, we just don't want to have regrets. We would just want to be able to feel like the decisions that we made were well informed, well researched. Want to say hi?
Hi.
That's Ryan.
Nice to see you, Ellie.
Was there anything that you wanted to say while you were here? Okay. All right. You can go play. All right. Okay, now I lost my train of thought. Okay, so anyway, we decided to forego transplant. And I have to say it was the best decision that we have ever made. I've never looked back and questioned that decision ever since. And, again, that was really just from like our own research. Our team didn't advise us to do it. And anyway, it proved to be a great decision. So anyway, fast forward, we get out to this new hospital in New York. We ditched transplant. We went into proton radiation and immunotherapy. And then she went on to a vaccine trial to keep her body clear. And anyway, Ellie is now 6.5 and she's clear. She's no evidence of disease.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Long journey to get there. But, we started kind of trying to also obviously integrate holistic, practices here at home to support her through this journey. We started introducing probiotics. I had read a study about how a specific strain of bacteria actually improved the effectiveness of immunotherapy, which was pretty exciting. So we had introduced that while she was going through antibody treatment. We kind of followed your lead and did the high dose DHA. That's been really important, and all the things that we have done, I really felt like I wanted them to be specific to our daughter's cancer, right? There's a whole sea of information out there on cancer, but pediatric cancer is different, I think, than adult cancer. And even neuroblastoma, right, is the most like heterogeneous cancer I can think of. Like, it is so different from one kid to the next. And so just knowing like your own child's genetic makeup and what works for them is like crucial.
Yeah. So were you, before I forget, do you remember the strain of probiotic that worked with the immunotherapy?
I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but I do. Bifiderm bacteria.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wouldn't do any better pronouncing it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
That was
could
good.
you, yeah, sorry. Do you could you elaborate at all on any of the kind of genetic research you were doing and how you made those decisions of on one thing versus another and kind of custom tailoring everything you were doing to to fit Ellie and neuroblastoma in general and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So like, we had been reading a lot about gut health and the immune system. So, we ended up getting like a fecal test done for Ellie to figure out like what strains of bacteria were present and which ones were not actually present in her body. So then we, specifically tailored the probiotics based on the results of that test. So that was really interesting and helpful. The high dose DHA, I had read, some information about how neuroblastoma actually thrives in like, you know, omega-6, kind of the flip side of doing DHA omega-3s. So we wanted to kind of like flip that little microenvironment, so to speak, by doing the DHA. We also gave her beta glucan to build up that immune system. And that actually was part of one of the clinical trials that Ellie was on. So that was part of the vaccine trial, actually, out in
You're
New
saying
York.
beta glucan specifically was
Yeah,
part of the trial?
yeah, crazy, right?
Wow. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
surprised I didn't know about that.
yeah. So we thought that was really interesting. I had read a little bit about beta glucan before she started that trial. So I actually, of course, like on the side, and I hope nobody from our hospital is listening to this, but so like on the side, I'm giving her like all these supplements, and then I'd go for checkups. They're like, "Are you giving her anything?" I'm like, "No, definitely not. Not giving her," because they always tell you not to. So but I wasn't giving her anything super risky. She wasn't neutropenic, so I wasn't. We felt like we were making safe choices in that respect. But yeah, so beta glucan was part of that trial for a year. So just that there, gave me a lot of confidence that they obviously believe that there's something to beta glucan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So we did the beta. We we do some like juicing. We mostly did like apples and carrots to do like to get the vitamin A. We tried out some of that bee propolis that you are a proponent of. So we have a nice supply of that, targeting those cancer stem cells and all the other goodness that bee propolis has to offer. Um, we got an infrared sauna, and that's actually been just a great investment. And for us, we spent a lot of money on her travel going out to New York over the past 2 years. So for us, we really had to find a good balance between, finding the things that work, but not, spending like our life savings on supplements, because it can get super overwhelming and super expensive in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily believe that more is better. I think that the right ones, I think you have to find the right ones and dial in on those. So,
Yeah, it's nice having the sauna too, because I mean it's the investment up front, but then it's not like, a supplement bottle that you're continually rebuying every month. You just
right,
yeah.
right. And it's one of those things where like it's great for all of us.
Yeah.
And, that's something we've also tried to be really conscious of is how can we as a family incorporate some of these lifestyle changes so that it's not just Ellie taking all these supplements and Ellie doing all these things. So, so the sauna has been, a nice way for us to all get involved in that aspect of her care. We actually tried the ketogenic diet for a while. Oh,
There
that
you
was
go.
yeah. Well, doing that with it's one thing to do it as an adult, but it's kind of another thing to try to do that with a 4-year-old.
It's tough, and I know a lot of people that more people that try than actually do it. Yeah.
I mean, we did it, and it was successful. There was some interesting information out. I think it was on Max Love Fierce Foodies, like, you know, that you know, those guys.
Yeah.
But they had put out some information about, you know, pairing the ketogenic diet, especially while you were in radiation. So that was something that we synced up when she was doing proton radiation, and it was challenging, but it was totally doable. We've, you know, we've since chosen to not sustain that long term, but we still maintain, you know, a low carb, you know, whole foods kind of diet. And
Has that been just on the dietary front in general? Was that, I don't know. It sounds like it was, what am I looking for? Was that a shift from, you know, how you were eating before? Did you have to, you know, you have other kids, I know.
yeah.
Have you had trouble getting them on board, or have you gotten them on board, or
You know,
how's that whole thing been?
yeah. So we also have a 4-year-old. So yeah, that obviously adds an element of challenge when you have other kids that you have to incorporate into your healthy eating. But no, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, we ate healthy, but we by no means, like, we weren't buying grass-fed beef. You know, we weren't buying organic, you know, farm fresh eggs, and you know, no, I would say we probably were not the healthiest people. Like, I made an effort to eat, like, especially healthy, like during pregnancy and breastfeeding and all those things, but um, you know, we love going out to eat, you know, Buffalo Wild Wings. I mean, yeah, I know. And I kind of cringe at it now. I mean, and we're certainly not perfect, and we still, you know, indulge in things that we shouldn't. But yeah, we've definitely come full circle, and we've eliminated a lot of things. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask what I know you guys, like you said, you've done a lot of traveling, going back out and back and forth out to New York. Um, do I remember seeing you at some point getting some sort of special plane service that helps kids with cancer, something like that? Was that
Yeah. We've flown through Corporate Angels, Corporate
yeah,
Angel Network.
that's
Yeah.
what it is.
They're-
Yeah.
yeah, phenomenal resource. You know, makes things so much easier. Flying through them, you don't have to go through security, and you know, you get there quicker, and you know, of course, there's the cost that they take care of everything. So they've been a huge, yeah, a huge help to us. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
yeah.
I don't know, just any other tips and tricks you feel led to share with, you know, parents that might be going through it you know, earlier on in the journey than later, or
Yeah.
events or thoughts, or just yeah, anything.
You know, there's so much that I wish I had known at the start of this. And you know, what I didn't realize was that, you know, every hospital has their neuroblastoma doctor, right? Or expert. Oh, they're our expert. And
It's they all, like, it seems like everyone is like the head of neuroblastoma across the
yeah,
country, but then
yeah, right. But no, they're not.
yeah.
And, you know, I think the same is probably true of, like, of most pediatric cancers. You know, like, there's always somebody, there's always a point of contact. There's always somebody that's in charge of the solid tumors or whatever. And I feel like, you know, I've seen families get hung up on this, like, oh, well, we have a great expert at our hospital. And it's like, no, but they're not. And, like, especially with this cancer, and probably any cancer, it is, you know, I can't stress enough the value in seeking out somebody who truly is an expert in your child's cancer. You know, we unfortunately got burned, and, you know, we trusted our medical team, and ultimately you should be able to place, right, a high level of trust in your team. And even now that we feel settled and we feel like we're with a team who's very competent and knowledgeable, I'm still doing all this research because, you know, that's how I can best advocate for my child. So yeah, I guess sometimes it's easier to just bury your head in the sand and, you know, be told what to do versus advocating what to do. And I think that we're a great example of kind of what can happen when you when you don't do your own research. But thankfully, you know, we came full circle, and you know, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours at night doing this research, and, you know, following you guys and networking with other families and learning what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, now Ellie's 6.5 and she's kicking butt. I mean, she's doing great. She's in swimming and dance and does well in school. And so, you know, as much as I would have liked to have like abandoned conventional, you know, therapy, we couldn't. You know, so we advocated to make the changes that we thought were the most important, and then supported her holistically as best as we knew how to.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's on the one hand, it's a tough leap to kind of, you know, take your kid's life into your own hands, more or less. But then when you're on the other side, it's, you know, I think it feels a lot better doing research and making decisions and rolling your sleeves up than just sitting back and just feeling helpless, more or less. Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I, you know, I think that was one of the things that I struggled with at first, was just feeling so powerless, right? Like you're just sitting watching all of this unfold. You have no say, you have no ability to make any of these decisions. And yeah, it's a terrible place to be. So it was actually very empowering, I think, for me to start doing, you know, the hard work, like you said, rolling up your sleeves, so that I could feel like I was making an impact in terms of her care.
That's pretty cool. And so you guys, I don't know, do you have like any sort of routine or typical day, or you know, any kind of thing mapped out that you got any, you know, supplements at this time or sauna at this time, or you just like, we're really big on a schedule. I don't know if you guys do a schedule, or if you just have a few things that you do, or just, I don't know, any kind of typical stuff you guys like to do.
We do. So I'm going to grab this here. Okay. So every month I type up, you probably can't really see the specifics here, but I don't know, maybe you can. But anyway, you know, we put together a monthly calendar. So like in the morning, she gets her probiotic, she gets vitamin D, she gets her medication for the trial that she's on. And then in the evening, I'm looking at my notes here, she gets her beta glucan. So like we alternate with the beta glucan and the B propolis. And then we have a schedule for like castor oil packs. So we rotate that with like detox baths and the sauna. So like it's all, you know, it's all kind of scripted out here because our life gets a little bit crazy and busy with 3 kids under the age of 6. So so having a calendar really helps, you know, me stay on track and reminds me of, you know, what exactly we need to do. And, you know, like we switch up our probiotics. So, you know, she's not always getting like the exact same probiotic and whatnot. So yeah.
Rotation, and schedule. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and even, you know, you guys talk a lot about like, you know, the importance of introducing new things all the time. And so like we fall into a routine and I'm like, oh, what else can we be trying? Like, you know, we need to change things up a little bit. Let's go grow some wheatgrass. And, you know, my husband, you know, laughs but, you know, he goes along with it. And so it works.
Why is it always the dads, except for me, that think all this is, I don't know, It's funny.
Yeah, I don't know either. You know, I asked if he wanted to sit in on this with me, and well, I guess he had to watch the kids. So
Someone's got to watch the kids.
Somebody's got to watch the kids. So, but yeah, you know, I mean, we do, you know, we bought like a Berkey, we do the filtered water. I took Ellie to a muscle tester. And, you know, they suggested that, you know, that there was arsenic in our water and all these, you know, crazy things. So, you know, we do the filtered water and essential oils, and, you know, we do the ones that, you know, have been grounded in research with neuroblastoma, like lemongrass and bergamot, you know, frankincense, those ones, and a couple of other ones. But yeah, so basically, you know, all the supplements that we have chose are specific to neuroblastoma.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy once you read all these alternative cancer blogs or, you know, websites or whatever, and then you start actually taking those supplements and researching them against neuroblastoma or, you know, leukemia or Wilms or whatever it is. And yeah, here's some studies on frankincense and neuroblastoma or lemongrass. And yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot out there. I mean, there's just a ton of information out there. And, you know, we learned early on, you know, when we were asked if we were supplementing with stuff, you know, we would always be told, no, you shouldn't be giving her that. No, don't do that. No, that confounds the study. We want all the kids to be the same.
They're precious studies. Yes.
And, you know, and on the one hand, I get it, right? They want the purest study, and, you know, they want to eliminate all the extra variables. So, but at the end of the day, it's my kid's life. So there's that.
And I want to do everything I can to help my kid live. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we did what we felt we needed to do.
Very cool, Andrea. Oh, I was going to ask, is it DFMO? Is that the current trial she's on, or?
Yep. DFMO, so 6 pills a day, 3 in the morning, 3 at night. And of course, all these great foods that we can't eat, like fermented foods, which drives me nuts because they're high in polyamines, which is what DFMO is trying to block in the body. So.
Yeah. So geek out on that for a minute. Have you, I've clicked around on, is that how you say it? Polyamines?
Polyamines, yeah.
Yeah. From your research, is that, I don't know, is that a legitimate concern? I guess it, you know, probably is if you're avoiding all those things.
Yeah. I mean, the belief is that neuroblastoma has a polyamine addiction. And I think it's been especially found to be the case with McN amplified kids. But, you know, they say that across the board, right, that it's beneficial for all kids to, that DFMO is, you know, effective with all kids, regardless of amplification status. So, you know, for us, it was one of those things where the trial was optional. I mean, she's already clear, but there were relatively few side effects. So we felt like, let's just do it. And if the side effects become too much, then we'll drop it. So yeah, I mean, it's a bummer because a lot of like healthy foods you can't eat. Bananas and oranges, grapefruit, those are tomatoes. Those are some of the highest levels of polyamines. So.
And before I forget, so when Ellie, when you kind of got the re-diagnosis or whatever you want to call it, when you found the second case, were you given a prognosis at that time? Any sort of percentage, anything like that they were throwing at you?
Not specifically. I mean, I knew from my own research that, you know, survivability was like 50%. So we were at 95% with stage 2, and then, you know, that dropped drastically down to like 50%. But, you know, nobody likes to talk specific numbers, with you. You know, it's kind of like, well, we'll just have to wait and see how she does. So, you know, I never felt the need to ask anybody because I had read it all. You know, like I knew, you know, and that was one of the reasons that we didn't do transplant, is because you know, the data strongly showed that kids who went into transplant with 2 or fewer spots had a much, much better outcome than kids that had more than 2 spots. And Ellie had 3 spots at the end of chemo. So, so we decided, you know, that we weren't going to do it because, like, look, the data is showing that kids with Ellie's amount of disease aren't going to do well with this. So, like, why would we do this treatment? Well, because it's part of protocol. You know, like, they don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's protocol.
You know, like, that's what my piece of paper says you're supposed to do. So that's what I'm going to recommend. Yeah, which is nuts. But again, I think that just goes back to finding somebody who is really well versed in your child's particular cancer. Because it was kind of crazy. I mean, Ellie's always had MIBG avid disease. So all throughout treatment, she went through chemo, radiation, and immunotherapy, and her MIBG scans always lit up, which is strange, right?
Yeah.
But you know, the team that we're with has found that there are a small subset of kids who will continue to have MIBG avid scans, that they will have scans that show disease. And what they've realized is that these scans can actually detect not only like live active disease, but it also shows dead disease. So
interesting.
Kind of a weird deal, right?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, so our team actually switched to doing, they moved away from doing an MIBG scan for her to doing a PET scan, because a PET scan shows metabolic activity, and her PET scans were negative. So that was actually huge, like really huge for us, because most other institutions, if you have a positive MIBG scan, they will continue to treat and treat and treat and treat. And generally, like, a lot of times it's not even the cancer itself that kills kids, it's the side effects from all of this treatment. So we really were very thankful that, again, we were with a team that knew, you know, to do a different type of scan with her. And ultimately, I think we avoided a lot of unnecessary treatment.
Yeah, I think that's really important to point out. You know, on our site and kind of on the alternative side of things, it's always, you know, kind of the conventional versus alternative or holistic or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, have you gotten a second opinion from some just straight up alternative practitioner? But just on the conventional versus conventional, or, you know, conventional to conventional side of things, you know, a lot of times you'll hear, especially with childhood cancer, that you can go anywhere and get the same recommendation and the same, you know, protocol and all that good stuff. But not always the case. And one conventional provider can in fact be, you know, make a whole world of difference just compared to, you know, another conventional provider. So that's,
I mean, it's huge. And, you know, in our case, we were never told that there was another place that didn't do transplant. You know, like, that would have been nice to know. Instead, we just happened to stumble across it. And, you know, so, so there's a lot of variability even with conventional medicine, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Andrea, I don't know. I'll let you go. This has been really cool. It's been it's been really cool getting to talk to you after all these years messaging, for sure. Yeah. Do you have any kind of final thought or sentiment or anything like that you want to take us out with for anyone, you know, a little earlier on in the journey?
I guess just don't be afraid to dive into this head deep. As overwhelming as it is, you have a lot of you add a lot of value as a parent. You can have a strong voice if you want to in your child's treatment, and you can make a big impact if you want to. So, don't be pushed aside, and don't be bullied or scared by your medical team, saying no to holistic things, and follow your heart. I don't know, that's what we did, and it worked out for us.
Oh yeah, Teddy Teddy reminded me to ask, do you have anywhere that you would like to direct people's attention to? Ellie's page, or I see you're working on kind of a neat little project. Yeah. Anything you'd like to let everyone know about?
Well, if you want to follow our daughter's page, it's on Facebook, and it's called Ellie's Place, and we post little updates, and you can go back and read our life story.
What about your is it Peekaboo?
Oh, Peekaboo Beans.
Yeah.
So I finally ventured into something for myself after all of this cancer stuff. But yeah, just selling, eco-friendly kids playwear that doesn't have chemicals in them, and so feel good about that.
It looks pretty sweet. Those look like some quality garments. I think we're gonna have to pick up a couple pairs. Do you have a website for that?
Yep, also on Facebook. So just Facebook, Peekaboo Beans, and then Andrea Shoup.
Peekaboo Beans, Andrea Shoup, Ellie's Place. Awesome. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. This was good.
And thanks everyone for tuning in to the 5th edition of the My Kid Cures Cancer Thriver Stories. We'll see you next week, next Monday, with a new awesome story. Good night, Andrea. Good night, everybody. See ya.